Okay, y'all. So today I'm going to show you how I'm going to eat, what I'm going to eat after my extended fast. So I'm going to break it down into 3 phases. The first phase, you'll see the food I'm going to be eating, and I'll be eating that same food for 2 to 3 days. Then the second phase, I'm going to show you the foods I'll be eating for the entire day. And just know that I'll be eating those foods for 3 days. And then for the final phase, which is on the seventh day, I will return to my normal 15 to 2,000 calorie diet and show you what I will eat for that whole day. So just know that it's broken up into phases. And this is something that I kind of found online and tweaked it for my needs. And so, or for my lifestyle, because a lot of people who fast are people who are ketoers, and I'm not a ketoer, so I didn't include bone broth on my first day. I used vegetable broth, and some of the things I will show you how to make as well. So let's get into it.
Okay, so let's get into the first phase of this where I'm consuming liquid foods and fruit. So I'm starting out with my coconut water. And as you can see, y'all, I'm showing you this coconut water because it's very low calories, no added sugar. And I'm using actually 3 of them because I'm making a smoothie with apples, cucumbers, and kale, enough for 3 days. So that is how I'm going to break my fast for the next 3 days with this delicious smoothie. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to have for my first couple of days is I'm going to make a homemade vegetable broth, and I'm going to be sure I'm really washing the vegetables really well here. I'm using salt and water, sea salt and water. I've let them soak, and I'm going to just scrub all the dirt off of them. There's going to be no need to peel these vegetables. I'm just going to cut them in big chunks because they're only going to be used just to make the broth. So I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of oil, and I'm going to put in my onions and my garlic first, and then throw in the rest of my vegetables and let them kind of saute around a little bit until they are fragrant and just not even soft really, because they're going to get soft with the when they start cooking. So now I'm going to add in my salt and pepper, then bring that all to a boil, and then I'm going to lower the heat and let it simmer for 45 minutes. Side note, y'all, I just want y'all to see my windowsill garden, succulent garden. If you see there is a flower going to bloom. And I thought that was a nice surprise after fasting and not being in the kitchen for 21 days. Now let's get back to this broth. So now it is done. And so now all I have to do is, after it's cooled, drain all of the vegetable chunks use the strainer to get all of those vegetable chunks out. Then pour it into my individual jars, and I'm ready to go with my vegetable broth. And now, y'all, here's another thing that I'm eating on this day, just a snack. This is kimchi. Fermented vegetables are encouraged during the first phase of breaking a fast, just to make your stomach ready and get it good bacteria ready, I guess, so to speak. So I am just trying this kimchi for the first time, and it's actually really, really tasty. It's very spicy, which I love. But through my fast, I just thought about ways to incorporate more fermented vegetables into my diet, because previously I had not been a fan of eating fermented things. But when you haven't eaten in 21 days, everything is good. So now here's a snack, y'all. Okay, so now for phase two, I can do everything I did in phase one, except now I can add cooked vegetables and healthy fats. Now I'm starting my day out with a smoothie as usual, but I am going to use some frozen fruit and some matcha along with my coconut water. And again, I'm making enough for the next 3 days, so I'm pouring in um, three servings of the coconut water, the frozen fruit, and then some matcha. And again, I'm going to blend this and then pour it into my individual jars and break my morning fast each day with this smoothie. Okay, so the next thing I get to eat in phase two is now I can make cooked vegetables. And so I'm going to make a hearty vegetable soup as my midday meal. So I'm starting out with some coconut oil in a Dutch oven, and I'm going to saute some scallions, some onions, and some garlic. Then I'm going to add in my butternut squash and just kind of saute that with the onions until everything is nice and fragrant. Gonna add in some of my brags. Use whatever seasoning you want if you're gonna make this type of soup. I love brags, and I really wasn't picky at this point. So now I'm adding in my butternut squash, and I'm going to just saute that for about 5 to 10 minutes. Once that is nice and coated with oil, then I'm going to add a little bit more of my turmeric seasoning. That's my favorite, y'all. And then I'm going to then add in my homemade vegetable broth from the other day. And then I'll add in some tomatoes, some canned tomatoes, and the rest of my vegetables. Okay, so now that my soup is all bowled up, I have topped it off. I'm topping it off with some pickled onions and some avocado for my healthy fat. And then I'm going to top it off with some additional dill seasoning. And y'all, I could not be more grateful for this delicious, hearty bowl of vegetable soup. This is like my first cooked meal um, after the fast. This is my first official cooked meal, and I am so grateful for it, as I am this apple that I devoured right afterwards. So now I am on to phase three, or the seventh day of my refeeding week. So I start out like usual because I'm back to my normal diet with my cup of green matcha tea. And of course, I add in a little bit of frozen sea moss to start to get my vitamins and minerals back in. The next thing I do mid morning is make one of my absolute favorite meals, which is my avocado and tomato toast, y'all. This was a meal that I actually could not wait to have back in my mouth again. I am being very, very generous there with that avocado. I'm taking a heaping spoonful and spreading it across each piece of my Ezekiel bread. I was very generous with the tomatoes as well. You can barely see them there, but when I start topping them on, you will see that I am going to pile those tomatoes on very high, because for some reason this was one of my cravings: tomatoes, onions. I don't know why, but it just was. And look at that beautifulness. It's just beauty on a plate, y'all. And I was so excited. I can't even find the words to express how happy I was to be having this avocado toast. I'm telling you, this is one of the things that I thought about and couldn't wait to have while I was fasting. It was the easiest, healthiest thing that I could think of that I would actually enjoy. And again, I couldn't be more happier, y'all. And this cucumber marinade was another snack that I had enjoyed while I worked on my butternut squash lentil kale stew. I'd started my stew by sauteing some garlic and onions and scallions in some coconut oil. Then I actually just sauteed that for a little bit until it was nice and fragrant and slightly translucent. Then I added in a mix of different seasonings and I mixed that well together. Let's let that saute for a few minutes. After I did that, I went ahead and added in my butternut squash. That's about 3 to 4 cups of butternut squash. And I let that cook until I could easily poke it with a fork. Then I added in a half a cup of lentils and then a quart of vegetable broth. Then I brought all of that to a boil. Then covered and let it simmer for 30 minutes. So once it's simmered, I go ahead and pour in my can of coconut milk as well as add in my chopped kale. Cover it back up and let it cook until the kale is nice and wilted. And then you have this final result of this very colorful, healthy, nutritious butternut squash kale lentil stew. And y'all, this is basically the final meal to wrap up my refeeding week.